WNJN Montclair, transmitting from Montclair State.
Next on Images Imagenes, the plight of Cuban refugees in Guantanamo and Panama. Saludos, welcome to Images Imagenes. I'm Miguel Perez. The Haitians are going home to a free and democratic Haiti. All along, they were told that their stay in Guantanamo would be temporary until the United States and the United Nations were able to remove military dictators from power. But the Cubans were not given such hope. They were told that they have to stay in refugee camps indefinitely. There is no UN-sponsored blockade of Cuba, and except for Cubans, no one is calling on Fidel Castro to leave or give him the kind of ultimatum they gave General Raúl Cedras. But what are the living conditions in those refugee camps? What is the state of mind of those people being held indefinitely? And what are Cuban Americans doing to ease their pain? Those are just some of the questions we'll be trying to answer with a panel of Cuban Americans who are organizing relief efforts and who have some strong opinions about the Clinton administration's decision to shift a 28-year policy of granting Cubans political asylum and begin to place them behind barbed wire fences. Gerardo Fernandez is the president of Liceo Cubano Club of Passaig, who has organized a relief drive. Manuel Fuentes is a teacher at Lincoln Middle School in Passaig, who asked his students to write letters to the Cuban children in Guantanamo. ROSA SARDUY is the vice principal of school number 10 in Passaic and also involved in relief efforts, and State Assemblyman RUDY GARCIA, whose constituents in Hudson County are part of the second largest Cuban American community in the country. Welcome everyone to the show. Before we go on talking to you, we want everyone to see this report prepared by our own Ana QUINONES on the Cuban refugee situation.
You have seen the drama unfold as thousands of Cuban refugees risk their lives in shark-infested waters to reach the ultimate goal of freedom.
You haven't seen the thousands of people who have died at sea, children, men, women, in search of freedom, in search of democracy. We haven't seen that. Those are not the pictures that we view. And you haven't seen the cruel dictatorship that, in fact, oppresses people and puts them into such a position that they are willing to risk everything that they have to take to some flimsy craft and to try to obtain liberty.
But lately, the dream has been shattered as the new immigrants find themselves detoured and detained behind barbed wire fences.
Que esa gente que vinieron buscando la libertad. Y lo que han encontrado es la prisión.
Yet the hope of reaching America lives on. Next to Florida, the state of New Jersey has the second largest population of Cubans in the United States. Over 52,000 live in the Garden State. And it seems that everywhere you go, the anger at Fidel Castro and the fear for loved ones is evident.
Estoy nerviosa, estoy nerviosa. Si vengo nerviosa, hoy es el primer
This
día
woman
que
told us she is very nervous because she has not heard from her family and fears the worst. Another woman found relief in a letter stating that her daughter had reached Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
Hi, Ileana. Aquí está tu mamá, está bien. Besito. Bye.
Meanwhile, members of the Cuban community told us they will continue to send food, clothing, and medical supplies to Guantanamo in order to relieve the pain and suffering. At the Lincoln Middle School in Passaic, one teacher made the Cuban situation in Guantanamo a class project.
The name of the project is Operation Rafters, and a friend of mine had the idea of having these students throughout the district write letters to the children of Guantanamo, the children in Guantanamo who are about the same age.
We asked a few of the students to tell us what they wrote.
That they'll be able to reach wherever they want to go so they could be free from whatever they're trying to get away from.
I think my letter is going to be special because I tell them that I passed through their hardships that they are passing through right now. And I know how dangerous it is because if I pass through a river, they had to pass through an ocean. That is more dangerous.
I felt that it wasn't fair that they had to suffer that much, but I didn't try to base my letter on their sufferings, but that I wanted to like send it through to them that it's not a permanent situation and that there will be better days ahead. It's not going to be only suffering and pain, but there will be happy times where all of the suffering will be worth it at the end.
I think my letter will make a difference in a couple of people's lives over there because they're bored. They need some friendship. They need some, some entertainment. And, in my letter, I informed them, like, my name, who am I, what I do.
If they were to write back or something and then they wrote back and they told us that they were here and we got to see them, that would be special.
All of this pain will amount to happiness someday. So I hope my letter cheered you up a little bit, and please keep in touch. Your friend, Tina Marie Ramos.
And with us here on the program is the teacher who you just saw on that video, Manuel Fuentes. As a teacher, I think you must be learning a few things from your own students when you read those letters.
For one thing, I'm extremely proud to see them express the feelings that most of us have towards people in need. And I saw a program yesterday where it says you never give up on children because children are the future, and this is proof. The children really understand the needs of the people in Guantanamo.
How did this letter writing program come about? What is the idea behind it?
A community initiative was brought up to the Passaic Board of Education, and the Passaic Board of Education passed a pen pal Operation Rafters program, which is supposed to be implemented throughout the district. In my class was the first to respond to this initiative.
Now all these letters will be taken to the Cuban children in Guantanamo.
I believe they're on their way already. I believe they're on their way already, yes.
And what do you think will be, having read the letters as you have, what do you think will be the response of some of those kids? How do you think they'll make them feel?
It will make them feel that we care for them, that other people care for them. It will make them feel that they will not be in those surroundings for the rest of their lives, that they're just going to be detained. Hopefully the detainees will be actually detained for a very short while.
One of the things that struck me the most when I went to Guantanamo for the Bergen Record was the children and the situation that those children are in. I think it's tougher on them than, of course, anyone else. And there are more than 3,000, close to 3,100 children in Guantanamo right now. Many of them are newborn. 15 or 20 of them are newborn children. I saw a woman who came on the raft with a 20-day-old baby. Gerardo, tell us about what your group is doing to help the refugees in Guantanamo.
Miguel, the Liceo Cubano is working in conjunction with the Miami Medical Team Foundation. Medical Team Foundation is a group of doctors that they go all around the world helping the needy people. We're working with them, and through the hard work of our Pro-Refugee Committee, we have assembled a group of merchants that have pledged. And I'm going to tell you their names. So, Rafael Mendez from Mendez Dairy, Rene Caraballo, and Domingo Ten. Domingo Ten is from the Dominican Republic. They're the owners of the Extra supermarkets in New York City. We have Abel Hernandez from Mi Bandera Supermarket, Alfonso Perez, the owner of Twin City and Pueblo Supermarkets in Elizabeth, and Eduardo Bullon of Bullon Construction.
So you have most of the major Hispanic supermarkets donating goods to send to Guantanamo.
Yes, sir, and they have pledged trailer loads of goods on a monthly basis, if necessary, to help the needy people in Guantanamo. I think that's something very wonderful that they're doing.
But Rosa, at the Liceo, you guys are also, and you ladies are also gathering donations from individuals, not just the merchants, but individuals who come in. What kind of stuff are they bringing?
We are trying to encourage everyone who can help to help in any way, because through that we are not only helping the ones that are in Guantanamo, but we are giving a message that this country is a free country and we come here to be free, and many of us feel that the children, especially the children, and the people in Guantanamo have been betrayed by not giving them the freedom. We want them, and we have a list that Mr. Fernandez can help us on that, a list of goods that they can send. And they can also send donations, and that will be to the Liceo Cubano that is located in 169 Lexington in Passaic, New Jersey. And they can call. Is there a phone number? Yes, there is a phone number, and there is a machine, 777-1883.
Okay.
And we would like everyone to help. As you heard, Mr. Fernandez, we have other nationality help, and this is not only a Cuban problem. This is a freedom that have been betrayed, and we have to make very clear that that's why we are here.
We're going to get to the political side of the whole situation any moment, but first let's deal with the relief efforts. And Assemblyman Garcia, as a representative from Hudson County, the second largest Cuban community in the country, as I mentioned in the introduction, you see a lot of Cubans really reaching out to help their fellow Cubans in Guantanamo and in Panama and all over the world.
Absolutely. There's also a similar project happening right now in Union City. It's called Proyecto Hermandad, Project Brotherhood. And what that project is doing, there's Manito from Casa Manito, there's Roberto from the Union City Cafeteria, Julia Valdivia. All leaders of the community are going together to provide services to the Cuban people. But I think more importantly, what that proves is if those Cubans were to come here to the U.S., if we're willing to support them while they're in Guantanamo, that same community would support and help those Cubans if they came here to the United States. If those Cubans come here, they will not need that public assistance. They will be supported by the community, and they will be self-sufficient like the other Cuban immigrations that came here before. And I think that's an important point to make right from the start.
And it's also an important point to note that most of them have sponsors in the United States, close relatives who are willing to take them in.
And what's funny about this whole situation, Miguel, and I want to get into this right now, is this. In Cuba right now, where the United States is willing to provide 20,000 visas each year to Fidel Castro. There are around 40,000 immigrants on Guantanamo and in Panama at this moment. We're spending millions of dollars, not only the Cuban community, but the United States taxpayers, in supporting those refugee camps. Why can't they just take the first 2 years' worth of visas that they were going to issue to Fidel Castro to give to the other Cubans, give it to those refugees that are located in Guantanamo and Panama, save the tax dollars, and reunite those families and end this crisis, at least when regards to these refugees.
Well, what sounds amazing is that out of those 20,000 visas that they want to give to Cubans in Cuba, not the ones in Guantanamo,
exactly right.
They want to have a lottery of 5,000 of them. And avoid the people in Guantanamo. I mean, I think it's even more disrespectful to the people who risk their lives at sea to get here, and to avoid them altogether, ignore them altogether, and try to have a lottery for those who are still in Cuba.
It doesn't make any sense.
President Clinton keeps repeating that in order for the Cubans in Guantanamo to come to the United States, they're going to have to go back to Cuba first. What do you folks think about that? I mean, what would happen to them if they do return to Cuba?
Well, you know what's going to happen to them once they return to Cuba. We cannot accept that. No way, no how. It's a double standard. The administration is playing with the Cuban people, and it's not acceptable.
Well, someone who can definitely talk about this subject, because I've heard him talk about this subject when I was covering this whole refugee crisis in Miami. For 5 weeks I was in Miami covering the refugee crisis, and I saw Mr. Arturo Cobo on the telephone from Florida. We have Arturo Cobo, who heads El Hogar de Tránsito, the transit house in Key West, where Cuban rafters were received and fed and clothed when they arrived in Florida until the policy was changed. Mr. Cobo, first we should say that your organization involved many Cuban-American volunteers who donated their time and their money to help their fellow Cubans, and that your operation was almost rendered obsolete when the refugee policy, when they started detaining the refugees, and where they were no longer allowed to stop at your center. But what I believe is happening now is that your group is taking on a new role. Tell us about that. Mr. Cobo, do you hear me? Let's see if we can get him back on the line. I think we lost Mr. Cobo. But in the meantime, you saw what I just said to him. You heard what I just said to him, Mr. Garcia. Let's talk a little bit more about that double standard. The Haitians always said that there was a double standard against them.
I agree. What's happening is this. The Cubans here in the United States feel, and especially the ones in my district feel, that if we had a blockade of Haiti, and we told them that if Mr. Cedras was not removed or if he did not withdraw from power, we were even going to invade Haiti. Why is it that we are isolating Cuba and not implementing the same type of policy against Cuba? Another example, it's not against the Cuban people, it's just to oust Fidel Castro the same way it was just to oust Raul Cedras. For example, here in the New Jersey State Legislature, we passed a bill, a law, prohibiting the investment of New Jersey pension dollars with any company that did business with South Africa during the apartheid. I've introduced the same measure to prevent dollars from the New Jersey State pension system to be invested in Cuba until Fidel Castro is gone, but that hasn't moved. That's double standard we're seeing at a national level, sometimes here even at a state level, that we can no longer accept, and that's a major point of opposition and criticism that the Cuban people in the United States, and particularly in my district, have towards both the governor and the president.
Well, the point I was making about the double standard, it was that the Haitians had a point, I believe, that there was a double standard in the treatment of U.S. immigration policy toward them when Cuban refugees came in automatically and were given political asylum and the Haitians were not. It was the Haitians who were being discriminated. But then when I went to the Haitians in Guantanamo and I asked them, and I said to them, look, when you wanted the policy to be changed, did you want the policy, the Cuban policy to be applied to you or the Haitian policy to be applied to the Cubans? In other words, did you want to come to Florida or did you want the Cubans to be brought to Guantanamo? And they all said, no, no, no way. We never wanted the Cubans to come to Guantanamo. When we complained, it was a strategy because we wanted to be treated like the Cubans. We never wanted the Cubans to go through this suffering. So, and what happened is that the Clinton administration did the thing in reverse. Instead of giving the Haitians the treatment that they needed equal to the Cubans, they gave the Cubans the Haitian treatment, but that Cuban double standard comes in that now the Haitians are not giving hope. I mean, the Cubans are not giving hope, and I want you folks to talk about that.
What I cannot understand is why they are trying to establish an analogy. When our crime started 35 years ago, it's a big difference, and when we talk about being treated equally, it's because we are trying to respond to the political game that is going on, but not because we really feel that it's an analogy there. We have been crying for many years, and it's of course for Cuba an emotional issue because we have lost a lot of families there, and it's a communist system that was involved, and we thought at least the United States was against the communists, and that's what we thought that we were going to be respected.
Vice President Gore said there was no comparison, because he said it was like apples and oranges comparing Cuba and Haiti. And in a sense, he's right, but for the wrong reason. Because Cuba is 90 miles away, Haiti is 600 miles away. Cuba is a 35-year dictatorship, Haiti is a 3-year dictatorship. So there, in other words, Cuba, if the United States is going to be worried about dictators, I would think it should be Cuba first.
Well, it's a clear case of the Clinton administration falling into Castro's hands. Once again, he's doing what Castro wanted him to do. Castro wanted to create this problem, and Clinton applies them. So that's
I think the problem lies a little deeper than that. I think the Clinton administration has been victimized by the anti-immigrant sentiment throughout the United States, and we have overlooked the human rights of the Cubans in Guantanamo, in Panama, on Cayman Islands, because of this sentiment. You write about this quite often in your columns.
Now, do you see your students understanding this whole thing, what's happening, the treatment, the political angle, how, you teach in junior high school. How sophisticated is their political understanding of this?
I think they understand the feelings of those who suffer. Sometimes when children understand suffering better than adults, and maybe that's why they always say
God says the children are angels. Sometimes we overlook the feelings of people and their plight for other reasons that are not as important. And I think the Cuban issue is an example of this case.
Assemblyman, tell us a little bit more. You're a Democrat.
Yes.
And you're very close to Congressman Robert Menendez, for example, who has been very vocal and very much involved in this issue. I saw Congressman in Guantanamo. When I was there, he was also there along with Congressman Torricelli and many others. But what do you sense is the, because after all, the other Cuban congressmen, both of them from Miami, are Republicans, so they are a little bit more vocal in criticizing the Clinton administration than Menendez, who is a Democrat and, of course, would be criticizing his own party. But you don't seem to have a problem with that. You've already been very outspoken in the program so far.
Well, I'll tell you this, Miguel. I don't think this this transcends political party, because Reagan and Bush were in power, Fidel Castro was still there, and they did nothing to end the plight of Fidel Castro. So all that soapbox that really the Republicans do with the issue of Cuba, that's all it is. It's talk, because they've done nothing to deal with the problem of Cuba. But with the issue of President Clinton, he did two good things. I think Bob Menendez and Torricelli and those Cuban congressmen were very instrumental in bringing that about. And that was suspending the flights to Cuba and suspending the dollars being sent to Cuba. What that does is it hurts Fidel Castro in his pocketbook, because that's the currency he was using to trade and obtain goods on the market. So that's one area where the president stood out.
But let me just stop you there. But it wasn't just the congressman, it was the Cuban-American National Foundation, right, Democrats from Miami, who met with President Clinton. And when they came back, I was in Miami when they gave an explanation of what they had.
But I just want to, before that
what
meeting,
they took out of this meeting was that President Clinton was willing to do all these things, the sanctions, the additional sanctions, but that we had to accept the president's decision to treat the refugees in this way. And I think that's, personally, I think that's, as a Cuban, I think that's unacceptable.
Right. I mean, that's my position as well. But I just want to say, but Bob Menendez and Torricelli, they met with the congressional leaders, they met with the president before anyone else came in, that's my understanding, and they were instrumental in implementing that policy. The problem with the refugees at the time is they wanted to get those refugees out of the water, and then this turned into this Guantanamo. But their idea of accepting the Cubans in Guantanamo was to slow the tide of them risking their lives and losing so many people. 6 out of the 10 people who come on a raft would die. So that was the initial idea, but no one thought that it was going to turn into Guantanamo.
It wasn't just the saving lives, but it was also there was a political angle too. It was the escape valve theory.
That's right.
In other words, they wanted to stop Castro's escape valve. In other words, if all the dissidents leave Cuba, then Castro can stay in power another 20 years, so that the Cubans in the United States wanted, in a sense, to stop this, plug the escape valve so that the dissidents would overthrow Castro in Cuba. But then again, you know, what right do we have, if we came to this country and we're here, to say to other Cubans, okay, I'm on this side now, but you have to stay? Yeah. I mean...
Well, it's a shame that these people have fixed everything to leave the concentration camp that Cuba has become, and they have ended up in another concentration camp. That's something that we have to address. I think the Cuban community should put all the pressure that it can on the administration to take care of this problem right now.
Absolutely.
And you know, it saddens me when I see governments such as Colombia's government, Gaviria, would say to a reporter, oh no, Cuba doesn't have a tyranny. And I remember the reporter saying to him, then what do you call it? Now, it saddens me to see a country like Mexico that actually had relations with Franco right after Franco, with Spain right after Franco died, to have relations with a dictator like Fidel Castro. What is this double standard all about? Just because Fidel Castro has a discrepancy with a superpower doesn't mean that he's right or that he's doing good things for his countrymen.
Well, maybe part of the explanation, and this is what many Cubans in Miami told me as far as Mexico is concerned, is part of the explanation is that if you go to Cancun or if you go to Acapulco, you see what Cuba would have been today if it had not been for Castro. In other words, all that progress, all those hotels, all that tourism. Mexico doesn't want Cuba to be free, in a sense, because all the tourism will go to Cuba and will not go to Mexico.
That's one of the strategies. Some of these countries are really getting some of the benefits that Cuba came down, not only socially, but in the tourist world and economically. And we realized, but this is more like a human rights situation, and it's more like a communist system, if we can say, encouraging the communist system to go on and continue in the world.
We're running out of time. Mr. Fernandez, could you run by us briefly what the main items is that you are collecting? What can people donate if you go to the Liceo in Passaic?
Okay, the main items are like baby needs, feminine hygiene needs.
Clothing?
Clothing gotta be new. Gotta be new clothing.
Shoes? Tennis shoes?
Shoes. We can have tennis shoes. They have medicine. There's a whole cereal. There's a whole list.
Also,
batteries,
that's right.
books.
Books are very important.
Notebooks,
pencils.
They don't have anything.
You know that the Cuban community is very interested in their children being educated, and they are teaching them English to help them to make the right transition and be able to assimilate this country and the culture.
What is the hope for the future, Mr. Garcia? We have just like about a minute left, so please sum it up for us. What do you see happening in the next 6 months for those Cuban refugees in refugee camps?
My hope is that they accept that suggestion. It's a very simple one. Use the 40,000 visas that they're going to give to Cuba the next 2 years. Allow those Cubans to come here with their sponsors, save taxpayer dollars, and also reunite the families. Those children, those women and children and men should not be detained there any longer. And I think wisdom and common sense will prevail, and that will be the outcome of this situation.
I'm very sorry that we lost Arturo Cobo. He heads the Hogar de Tránsito, the transit house in Key West, where most of the Cuban refugees were assisted when they first arrived. We lost him. We hope to have him on another show in the future. Maybe we'll have him come to New Jersey and do a show in person. It's very important to hear what he has to say. He's also very critical of the Clinton administration and the comparisons that are being made with Cuba and Haiti. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week on another edition of Imagenes Hasta pronto.